I'm so excited to be here with you today, and I'm so excited that it's World Maternal Mental Health Day. Hi, everyone. I just had a little freeze there, so I'm just going to back up in case you didn't hear that first part. Hi, everyone. My name's Cree Lambeck, and I'm a registered psychotherapist and a certified teacher and a local mom of three wonderful kids. And I'm just so excited. I'm so excited to be here with you today on a very special day, which is World Maternal Mental Health Day. So it's May 6, 2020. It's World Maternal Mental Health Day, which is a special and important day that we celebrate worldwide every year. And so I'm just so honored and excited to be here with this group today. And I want to say a special thank you to Shelby and Morgan for inviting me to connect with you on this platform. It's obviously a wonderful community of moms that they've built up. And it's just so exciting to share this with you, and especially important on a day like today. So, all week we've been celebrating mental health awareness, and today is all about moms. So, it really is our special day as moms to talk about lots of really important things that affect and impact every single one of us. So, in my work as a psychotherapist, I work with a lot of moms in the perinatal population. So, moms and moms to be, and seasoned moms, and I work with a lot of women specific concerns. So, I'm happy to be here just to share some information and hopefully we can all learn a little something and also to answer any questions that any of you might have. So some of you have already sent in some anonymous questions, which I really appreciate. Thank you so much for sharing those. And so I will definitely address and speak to those. I can also chat with you about some sort of typical concerns that I hear from a lot of women and moms in my practice. And then please feel free to send in any questions that you have as we're chatting, and I'll try to address as many of those as I can as well. Okay, so again, today, World Maternal Mental Health Day, that's why we're here, and it's a really wonderful opportunity to shine a light on some of these really important issues that impact all of us. So I am available for the rest of the day. We have some stories going on Instagram today as well, so if you're part of that community, you might see some of these same facts and topics covered there, okay? So just to start, maybe it would be helpful to talk just a little bit about perinatal mental health in general. And of course, when we use that word perinatal, we mean maternal mental health. We mean the period of pregnancy as well as the postpartum period. That's what we mean by perinatal, okay? So many of us have already had experiences or are familiar with some maternal mental health concerns, particularly postpartum depression. This is one perhaps that we've heard the most about. But it's also really important to know that there are many other sort of complex concerns that often arise for women in the time of pregnancy and postpartum that go beyond depression. So some of these look like pregnancy anxiety, postpartum anxiety, pregnancy and postpartum stress concerns, and then sometimes more complex and serious disorders as well. So these are all some of the things that we can chat about. And one of the things that I notice is that it often comes as a surprise to many just how common perinatal mental health concerns are. So we know that about 20% of women, of moms, will experience concerns around anxiety and depression either in pregnancy or the postpartum period or both. And of course, it's important to point out that these numbers and stats are just what's reported. And unfortunately, we don't have a good way right now in place of screening for perinatal mood and anxiety disorders or general stress in pregnancy and the postpartum period. And so we really need to do better. And again, that's part of what today is about, is some advocacy. There's some really wonderful groups advocating for a national perinatal mental health strategy in Canada. So this is something that some countries have in place. We don't have this in place yet in Canada, but it is really essential for women's health and maternal mental health because it would involve universal screenings. So a lot of the moms that I talk to and hear about say that often in their visits with their practitioners during their pregnancy care, they weren't asked about their emotional health or their well-being. And some moms maybe have never been asked those questions during visits with care providers. So this is an area where we really need to do better. We really need to ensure that every mom is being screened appropriately so that these concerns and issues are caught early and that we can all become aware and attuned to some of the earlier warning signs. So with such a high number, 20%, as we said, about 1 in 4 women will experience these concerns. And again, unfortunately, because there is still a stigma around mental health issues, which is slowly changing, but it is still there and traditionally and historically has been there for a long time, this number is most likely a lot higher than 20%. So that is to say that none of us are alone. It can certainly feel like we're alone when we're sort of stuck with a really strong mood or really, really struggling. But this is why it's so important to have platforms and venues and connection and communication just like this so that we're able to talk and share ideas and connect and really get some of these messages out there. It helps to normalize the experience, and it also just helps us to know when should we reach out for support. What sort of par for the course and more kind of just to be expected. The adjustment of motherhood and parenting, of course, is massive. And at what point is something more going on? And we really need to sort of reach out for that help to get the proper screening and the proper supports and resources that we need to be healthy. So this is all part of an initiative, and you can see I'm wearing the t-shirt today. I was so happy because it came in the mail last night. I didn't think it was going to arrive in time. And then after work last night, I went upstairs from my basement office here, and the shirt was here. So this organization, Perinatal Mental Health Collaborative, was started by 2 amazing moms in Barrie, and they are really leading the charge on getting this national strategy in place. So if anyone is interested in learning more about that or getting connected with them, there's some advocacy work and petitions and lots of things going on that we can throw our support behind. So feel free to get in touch with me if that's a particular interest to you. Okay. So we're going to move, and again, feel free to send in any questions that you have. I have a list here that I will move to, but if there's anything you're hearing that you're wondering about or just any general questions about women's specific or maternal mental health concerns, that's what we're here talking about today if you're just joining us. So feel free to send in any questions that you might have. And so, one of the reasons why it's so important to talk about this, as we said, is because so many women experience these concerns. And also because what we know is that without proper intervention and treatment, poor mental health has long-term implications. Long-term implications for mom, as well as baby, as well as family, everyone who's important and who's in our lives can be impacted when these very real concerns are left untreated. And that's again why it's so important to reach out to get the support that's out there. There's lots of wonderful resources and supports that exist, much more than they ever have before historically. And so we know that the help is there, but it can be challenging to navigate the system and to sort of locate the right support for our concerns and to know what's going to be the right fit. And of course, that stigma is always hanging over us, and sometimes that can create a sense of doubt or a lack of trust, right? Some of us have had traumatic birth experiences or other struggles and difficult experiences, and sometimes that also contributes to a shaky trust we might feel when working with healthcare providers or being in a medical setting. So those are all some things that we can support women with and do support women and moms with in counseling. And I think it's also important probably to note that we're living in this really extraordinary time right now. Of course, there is so much uncertainty, there is so much unpredictability. Sort of our sacred normal has been ripped away from us, and we're all sort of in this limbo, kind of just trying to cope and wait it out and get some information. And it's really hard to kind of make plans and move forward, particularly for women who are expecting right now. So I've been talking with lots of moms and moms groups, and I do have a whole series of resources and videos and information for any moms who are expecting and preparing to deliver a baby during the pandemic. So in our regular counseling sessions, we will always work with lots of planning tools around planning for a family, planning for a healthy pregnancy, planning for a healthy postpartum period. Now more than ever, because we're dealing with this pandemic and all the restrictions that that brings, moms and I are really getting more specific, really looking at sort of grieving the loss of some of those lost hopes, those lost plans. This isn't what I expected it to be like. I'm worried about not having my loved ones with me. How am I going to choose who my one support person is in delivery? These are complicated issues, and they are concerns that can be supported in counseling in a really sort of measured and deliberate and mindful way. So I just want to kind of give a shout out to this really special group of women who are heroes in my book, who are approaching delivering during a pandemic. And to you especially, I want to say we have supports for you. There are new resources coming out every day. And so please, if anyone is struggling, reach out to me. I will help connect you. I can work with you, or I can connect you with other supports that are more accessible or that fit with your life and your needs. So let's just move to, I'm just going to have a look here to see if there's any further questions. And again, if you're just joining us, feel free to send in any questions that you have about maternal mental health or coping during COVID, or sort of how to, get through the days right now, given all of the stress and uncertainty that we're living in. Any questions at all, feel free to send them in. So I'm just going to read out a couple of the questions here that Morgan sent before. And so the first one is, dealing with postpartum depression and staying home, how do you suggest dealing with a partner who is also struggling and short-tempered in this situation? This is a great question. And this is a question I hear a lot. And it makes sense because, again, we are living with an enormous amount of individual and collective stress right now. And there is no way we're not absorbing that stress, not just our own stress, but everything that's going on the world around us. This is uncharted territory. We've never been through something like this before. And so the pressure is absolutely enormous. Our emotions are very close to the surface right now. And so I wonder if you've noticed, we've certainly noticed in our home that we're easily activated. Something that, a partner or a person says, or even our child says, that might usually just sort of roll off of us, it sort of strikes a chord. And it can be much more impactful than it normally would, of course, because we're living in this really uncertain and unsettled time. So knowing that, expecting that, things are going to be different right now. The rules are a bit different, those kind of unconscious contracts around what I can say and what I can't, and can I make a joke right now or can't I, is there room for sarcasm today in this moment, right? Things that, are usually part of our normal, they might not apply right now. So we're all sort of walking on eggshells, trying not to kind of activate each other. And that, can really add to the stress that we feel as well. So in response to this question, I would really encourage and am encouraging everybody to practice really good self-care right now. And I know self-care is a term that we hear all the time, and it almost just becomes meaningless after a while, right? But true self-care is not a privilege. It's absolutely essential. And if we don't care for ourselves in a way that improves our mental, physical, or emotional health and well being, we will start to struggle. And so every single one of us is really responsible for looking at how are we caring for ourselves right now during this stressful and uncertain time. And so each partner needs to sort of take responsibility for that as well. And we could talk for a long time about self care. It's one of my favorite topics, but I'll just leave you with the thought that true self care can sometimes be hard to recognize. Sometimes what feels like true self care is actually something else masquerading as self care. So we really need to kind of dig deep into that, develop our own self care plan and strategies, and ask ourselves what improves my physical, emotional, and mental health and well being? What feeds my soul and energizes me and keeps me going? And that can sometimes help us to navigate, those questions around what's true self care. And the other part of this question about dealing with a partner who's struggling and short tempered is really about stress discharge. And this is an important part of self care as well. This stress is accumulating right now. It's building up. There's all this not knowing, there's all this uncertainty. And as humans, we don't like that. We like to know, we like to plan, we like to know where we stand. And there's a lot of comfort in that. So, with that stress buildup, we all need to find ways to discharge that stress. And I have a video on this on my Facebook page as well if you want to learn more about this topic. But it's finding those ways that work for us that, again, can be part of the self care plan, ways to discharge stress, to release it, to get it out of our system and out of our bodies, so we're not sort of those pressure cookers that's just going to blow up any minute, maybe, at our loved one or our child. And just the last point on this question is mindful communication. This is something I talk a lot about with moms too, and there are really specific strategies here we can work with on how do I approach difficult conversations, especially if I'm feeling like I'm walking on eggshells. How do I approach a conversation with my partner or with a loved one where I'm feeling a little unsure of the outcome? I don't want to sort of stoke the fire and fan the flames, but this is also really important to me. So we can look at mindful communication strategies that will allow us to enter into a space where we can foster a healthy and open dialogue without sort of activating that natural human defense mechanism, which so often is the case. So I hope that helps with that question a little bit, whoever sent that in. And again, you can always reach out to me if anything you've heard here is of interest or you'd like to learn a little bit more about. So just if we've got time, Morgan and Shelby, I'll go through a couple more. The next one is, at what point when dealing with PPD would you request medication be taken? And would you recommend cannabis use in helping cope with anxiety? Okay, another really great question. So it's important to note that diagnosing and prescribing medication is outside the scope of psychotherapy. Those roles are filled by family physicians or psychiatrists, or psychologists can diagnose as well. So any questions around meds, I always recommend going to your family doctor if you have a good relationship, or your psychiatrist if you're working with somebody for medication questions. The medication piece varies. It depends. It depends on individual circumstances, on the frequency and intensity and duration of symptoms. There's lots of factors that go into that. But what we do know is that when women are experiencing postpartum depression or a perinatal mood and anxiety disorder of any kind, the best outcomes when we're looking at significant or moderate or severe symptoms is when we combine the right medication at the right dosage with good psychotherapy. When either of those aren't in place, sometimes the outcomes can be different. So sometimes when women are taking meds, for example, but they don't have the psychotherapy to learn sort of the psychotherapeutic coping skills and tools and strategies, then they worry that if they go off meds, they won't sort of have those skills or tools or safety net in place. So these medication questions are complex, but I would suggest following up with a trusted care provider. And with the cannabis question, using for anxiety, the jury is really out on this. And again, a proper assessment will give you a lot more information. especially looking at safe safe usage of medical cannabis. So you can always reach out to the cannabis clinic, and we have one in Hamilton, and they will provide a proper medical assessment. Some women find that cannabis can increase anxiety, but again, more testing and research is needed. And now that we've had these changes in legislation, that does sort of open up that space that we can do a lot more research and testing. So I hope that's helpful for that one. The next one, can PPD exist for a longer period than just when baby is born? What if you're dealing with it for years? Is it then just depression? Amazing questions from this group. I'm so glad everyone's so engaged. Like, amazing questions. It can absolutely exist for a longer period of time. So PPD the symptoms have to be present for a diagnosis. They have to have started within 6 months. This is according to the DSM's criteria of how we measure a diagnosis. But in terms of duration, many women will notice that their symptoms start to resolve within about 6 months postpartum. But for many women, 30 to 50% of women, those symptoms will persist and continue throughout the first year, until the first year. And then many women can still experience those symptoms up to even 3 years later. So at that point, if there haven't been other babies and the postpartum depression hasn't been reactivated, at that point it might fit the criteria more for depression. But it's certainly the case that postpartum depression and anxiety, which is usually part of postpartum depression, they overlap a lot, can persist for a long time. And that is why it's, again, so important to have it treated. So it would be sort of like, if I had another physical concern like a broken leg and I didn't get treatment, it would be a lot harder for me to heal and to recover more quickly than if I sort of knew the warning signs and got early help and the interventions that I needed for a full recovery. And then just another one about medication. Will I be on meds for the rest of my life with PPD? It depends. It depends on your own personal situation. Again, the intensity, severity, and duration of those symptoms and concerns. This is something to work with, again, the psychiatrist or your family doctor, whoever's prescribing the medication with. But many women I work with have been on medication short term and then have come off that medication and are absolutely thriving. So it's not a sort of one size fits all. It's really about getting in touch with what your needs are, what makes you feel good, how you find your own personal sense of balance and how you feel restored. And then working to build a really strong circle of care and support team so that it's not just you alone navigating this. And this is another big thing we work on in sessions is how do we find our sources of support and how do we build our teams? Who is in our care team? Are there gaps? Are there areas we need to strengthen so that we have really awesome, solid wraparound support and we have sort of different experts and different people to fill different roles? And this is just the last question, and then we'll wrap up. What are a few coping mechanisms you'd suggest for a mom struggling with PPD use in everyday situations? Awesome question again. So I would circle back to this idea of self-care. And if you've been joining us for a while, you might have heard us talk about that earlier. It was sort of questioning what is true self-care and what is sort of something else coming in, looking like maybe it's self-care, but perhaps not being in our best interest. And so self-care, again, struggling with PPD, even more important to be not just nurturing baby and giving to baby, but nurturing ourselves as well so that our cup is full, so that we can be there for the people that we love. When we feel good and have energy and feel like we're in balance, we can give so much more to the people that we care about who are around us. I would also just mention in this idea of building our support team, we can think of support sort of as falling into 4 categories of emotional support, practical support, community support, and professional support. So when you imagine yourself as the center of that circle, as mom, and as the woman in that circle, who is around you in your team? We need somebody to be there, and this goes for labor and delivery and postpartum as well. Much of what we work with in counseling is working on postpartum pregnancy and postpartum planners. And in the planning process, we look at who is your emotional support? Who is going to validate you, to see you, to hear you, to empathize with you, and to really have your back? Absolutely essential emotional support. Practical support, who is going to be, or who are the people or the person in your life who can do the day-to-day tasks, who's really good at getting stuff done and prioritizing and kind of maybe has a take charge personality. And this goes for, yes, labor and delivery and pregnancy, but also in the postpartum period and just every day. We need to have people fill this role and help us out with the practical things. Professional support is your care team. So that might include your mental health therapist, other care providers such as a naturopath or chiropractor or doula, any number of other supports, midwives, your OB, your team of professional support who you can go to for their expertise and who can really provide you with the information that you need to feel well and to sort of be your best. And then the last one is community support. Communities just like this one are so amazing to help us stay connected so that we don't feel so alone, so that there's someone sort of right there at our fingertips that we can reach out at. There's more and more groups like this, coming up. There's a new app called the Peanut app, which I love, which connects moms with other like-minded moms, almost modeled after a dating app. And there's, we say it takes a village to raise a child, but I think as well it takes a village to raise a mom and a parent. It's a absolutely massive transition that we really don't give the attention and focus that it deserves. So in terms of taking care of yourself, struggling with PPD in everyday situations, connect with support, reach out, try to build that team around you, reflect and consider who is going to fill what role, what areas do I need to strengthen on my team, and where am I going to get the support and the help that I need? Because asking for help can be hard. I'm a mom and a teacher and a doer and a helper, and I work with so many similar moms where, what I hear is I'm the one giving help, right? It's really hard to ask for help and to receive help sometimes. So especially today, World Maternal Mental Health Day, and talking about perinatal concerns, pregnancy and postpartum, and women-specific concerns, how can we sort of give ourselves permission to ask for help? How can we let others on our team and our circle come in and lend a hand? And especially during the time of pregnancy and delivery and postpartum, how can this be a time of receiving for us, right? So I hope that's helpful. Those were a few of the questions that came in, and I've been going on for a long time, so I'm going to wrap up. But once again, I just wanted to thank everybody who's listening and joining us, or anybody who watches the video later. It is World Maternal Mental Health Day. We're celebrating in Canada. It's an exciting day, and it's an opportunity to shine the light on women-specific concerns, maternal mental health concerns. We're advocating for a national strategy in Canada for universal testing so that women don't have to struggle and suffer, so that help is available. We know the early warning signs, and we know how to move forward to a place that feels a lot better. So if you'd like to connect with me, please feel free to reach out. All my information will be posted here and on the Instagram as well. I have a Facebook page at Cherry Tree Dundas. You're welcome to email me, cherrytreedundas@gmail.com. If you want to book a session, we have online booking at the clinic I work at, Blueberry Therapy in Dundas. And you could visit my website, cherrytreecounseling.ca. So there's so many different ways to connect. And if you connect with me, I'll try to help you get the resources and supports you need. There's some amazing stuff coming out. We've got a lot of information to share. It's just a matter of sort of navigating and finding it. So thank you, everyone. Once again, thank you, Morgan and Shelby, and thank you anyone who joined us or who's watching later. I wish you all a wonderful day and a great celebration of maternal mental health. And I hope everybody is well and continues to stay really well. Thanks again for having me, everyone. Bye-bye.